In the end, I would say it raises the legitimate question of how is it possible in a mature, liberal, democratic society that stands for tolerance, diversity, and inclusive and open discourse, that people are frightened to freely speak their mind.
As I said, we know where secular intolerance comes from, we know how it manifests itself, but what we don't know is how intense it is. We have a hard time gauging its scope, its intensity, and also trying to determine how it affects the church and Christian life. Another thing we found is that there is sometimes, very often, a confusion between caution and self-censorship. Many of the people we interviewed said, we don't want to offend and we don't want to create a scandal, which is a legitimate stance, I would say, but not when it's confused with self-censorship.
Well, from an outside perspective, it looks like we have a very comfortable situation in Germany, right? But from my findings and also from quantitative analysis that I've seen, one must say that the formally guaranteed freedom of speech doesn't automatically guarantee a plurality and well-balanced climate of opinion. So many people said it's not about strict legal cases, things like that, or persecution even, but everyone that I interviewed noted something like a change in climate or a narrowing, to put it in a different way, a narrowing of an opinion corridor, which is another concept that I like to use in this sense. It was interesting for me to find out that all interviewees, no matter from what sphere they came, we analyzed 4 different spheres, as you learned, all interviewees knew the risk of being pushed into a corner or, at worst, being excluded from public discourse at all. Many interviewees repeated that there seem to be some lines that you shouldn't cross in public discourse in Germany right now. And another thing that seems to be an absolute no-go is not being Christian or referring to a Christian heritage, but it is to be close to evangelicalism. Everything that refers to free churches, you never hear a politician identifying with that. It's largely seen as irrational, backwards, things like that. The German case reveals universities as the most hostile environments. And the largest extent of self-censorship I found in my example in the academic realm. So I would say there's evidence of a growing spiral of silence, to quote a classic theory of mass communication. It speaks for itself. The less certain opinions are being heard, the less people think they are standard and normal, and so they will keep silent about it. And this is something I would say is very true for Germany in all spheres, but the consequences of the narrowing of the opinion corridor are harder in academia, politics, and therefore, as it is coupled, in media as well.
At the Christian Institute, we do something like 350 public meetings a year all around the UK. And one of the most common questions we get asked, we always allow time for Q&A, and one of the most common questions we get asked is along the lines of, can I say X? Is it legal for me to express a Christian view about abortion or sexuality or transgenderism? Informed Christians, and we're an evangelical organization, so overwhelmingly that's our kind of constituency. Informed evangelical Christians are asking us quite seriously, are there laws to prevent us expressing a Christian view about same-sex marriage or about the fact that a man cannot become a woman and so on? That's the level of self-censorship that we've reached, where people think that it must somehow be against the law to express these views, and of course it's not. One of the things that the report says, and one of the things I want to strongly underline, is that certainly here in the UK, the law is almost always much better than the culture when it comes to free speech. The law is almost always strongly in favour of your freedom to speak, but the culture is not. Society is not. People are told, it's communicated to them in 1,000 different ways that there are certain things you can't say, and I keep using those 3 examples because they are the key ones. Views, Christian beliefs about sexuality and marriage, Christian beliefs about sex and gender, and Christian beliefs about life in the womb. The self-censorship is that people like street preachers will come to us and they will say, when I'm out street preaching, I don't tend to talk about things like sex because I don't need to. I just focus on the gospel. But people always ask me questions about sexuality, and they're trying to get me into trouble by drawing me into a conversation about these controversial issues. Am I free to give a faithful Christian answer? To which, of course, our answer is yes, you can. The law protects your ability to speak about these things. But again, they feel that pressure to self-censor. The police do sometimes tell street preachers that they can't say certain things. They sometimes even arrest them. They sometimes even prosecute them. Now, again, the law is better than the culture. And so every single street preacher case we have ever taken on, we've won. But there is still, when these cases happen, and again, the report points this out, even when we win the cases, it still has a chilling effect. The fact that the police did that, the fact that sometimes even prosecutors are willing to follow that up, it has a chilling effect. If you're having to train people to give them the courage to speak, that just confirms that there is pressure on them not to speak. I mean, my view on this is that if, as Christians, we can consistently speak well on these controversial issues where people tend to get upset and tend to want to shut us up, if we can speak well, we do several things. One is that we give other people permission to agree with us. People hear us, they think, oh, he's expressed himself quite well. She's explained that issue very well. I agree with that. I would happily get behind that. So you give people permission to agree with you, and that then has the effect that it creates space in the public square for other people to express similar views. So it's important that we do speak well on these issues. We have had to help people who have lost their jobs, merely for holding a Christian view on some of these issues. People who have lost their livelihoods, people who have been prosecuted, people who have been sued. I have worked with a lot of courageous people over the decades in this work, and I have also seen some of those people give in to the cancel culture. I've seen them pull out of speaking on certain issues. I've seen them withdraw.
The participants use terms such as self-regulation, prudence, use of a democratic language, strategy, or maybe saying the politically correct thing or Christian charity. Those who say they were able to openly express their own religion, their own beliefs, and also their position on sensitive or controversial issues, did so, but always recognizing that it was a freedom earned, but with a price to pay. The social media is often the best scenario for being criticized, for being even threatened. Sometimes the pastor or maybe bosses, they don't want to be linked with these Christians. They don't want to be linked with people that is showed as problematic or intolerant or discriminator. And is that there is a group that does not self-censor and accepts the consequences, convinced that their faith is worth it. There is other group, and these are those who self-censor for fear of legal fear to social sanction. And also there are also those who, due to constant self-censorship and an almost non-existent accompaniment in the faith, are losing their faith, or they stop seeing the characteristics related to self-censorship as a problem. We can say that the phenomenon of self-censorship is not only configured when a Christian does not openly manifest his Christian faith or his convictions or beliefs, but also refers to situations in which Christians cannot express their faith-based points of view on controversial issues. And although the chilling effect is commonly related to actions or omissions on a state level, the research reveals that social pressure is also very influential factors of self-censorship.
Freedom of religion and belief is not a political plot of some sort associated with only one type of belief or religion, but that is in fact a value that should be held dear by everyone, no matter their religion or belief or lack of belief for that matter.
We often think of religious persecution as being, people who are jailed or facing criminal charges, or even facing death for their faith. But often in secular countries, there is this death by 1,000 cuts, in the sense of being, having numerous smaller matters adding up to the larger issue of feeling under pressure for your faith, and thereby feeling this chilling effect that I can't say anything about my faith. More than 50% of evangelical Christians feel that society is not making space for them. And a little over 25% of Muslims share those beliefs as well, that society is not making room for them. And I mean, the poll kind of bears that out, that society does not, the Canadian society does not really appreciate evangelical Christians or Muslims. But I want to thank the people who wrote this report and encourage further research and study in this area for better understanding. I also agree with the recommendations that we need to be advising people of religious faith what their rights are, and training them how to share their beliefs in ways that are defensible in our society, that are not seen as spreading hatred, because that's often an argument that's made, that religious beliefs are spreading hatred against others. And that is not at all the case. And I think when people properly understand how to share their religious beliefs, they do it in such a way that, that they can be tolerated more in society. Thank you.